that I'm going to push into just a few minutes. But I want to talk about the black church and the identity crises in the church. Who is the black church? I mean, who is the black church? And let me just say this, not in disagreement with the pastor. I do believe in humankind, but I also affirm blackness. And I'm black and proud. And even though it is a human race, the white folk know the difference between a black body and a white body. The history of racism in America is systemic, and race is used in America as an economical lens, right? So you keep a certain level, kind, color of people in a certain economic class. So race is it's a social and economic convention, the very term itself. So we're living in a racist society. We're hoping for something other than, but America was founded upon racism. Founded upon. And the subjugation of black bodies has always occurred in America, and the church needs to address matters of justice. But we don't, right? So we're going to look at the identity of the black church, and you can just click through this here. During slavery, the black church was birthed, the black church in general was birthed as an invisible institution. Anybody ever heard that term? Invisible institution. Early black church, look at the years 1800, 1860, that's just past the founding of America, 1776. This is a church that slaves founded, right? Africans that came from particularly the West Africa to perhaps the greatest human tragedy. You know, we always talk about the Jews and 6 million. The Jews and 6 million. Africans were 17 million. But we don't even talk about the Atlantic slave trade that impacted almost 20 million people. And we still spend time on the Holocaust with 6 million Jews slaughtered. During slavery, the black church was birthed as an invisible institution, and it was counter to the white plantation religion. Now, mind you, Africans didn't know anything about Western Christianity. They're from Africa. What we have in the black church is a mixture, Mike, of African traditional religion and Western Christianity that makes us unique. I'll give you a good example of that. It comes from Africa. It's called the ring shout from the one of the tribes. And they would get in a circle, and they would hold hands, and they would dance and shout in a ring until somebody passed out. That was their religion. That was, praying to the gods, and somebody passed out. And once they passed out, then they felt like the ancestors were in them. Wow. Right? What is that, y'all? That ain't nothing but us shouting. And getting slain in the spirit. You don't see that in the white church as often as you do in the black church. It's because, Mike, it is the syncretism, the coming together of traditional African religion and this newfound Western Christianity. What's the invisible church? Well, the white plantation, usually Methodist preacher, slave owner, would come to the plantation, would preach to the slave, and would emphasize particularly passages that emphasized obedience to Christ. Right? Slaves, be obedient to your masters because this is the will of God. And they took that syncretistic religion, African religion, and this newfound God, this newfound Jesus, and then they would try to teach those slaves to be obedient because this was the will of God. Just work hard, work for your master, and then you'll be rewarded in the afterlife. Until them Negroes started reading. Because they also start teaching them the language, and then they start reading for themselves. And watch this, Mike, a black preacher by the name of Nat Turner start reading some other stuff in Exodus, where God told Moses, you go and tell Pharaoh, the government, right, the oppressor, you go and tell Pharaoh to do what? To let my people go. Liberation. That's what black theology is. And the father of black theology is a guy by the name of James Cone. If you ever read some of his books, you know, he was Barack Obama read him. Barack Obama's pastor, Jeremiah Wright, was a black theologian. You know, they tried to crucify him when Obama was running for president, but yet he's the one that raised Obama, right? And black theology, most preachers have never read a single book regarding black. In other words, black theology says, I'm going to look at God from the lens of my own people, not the slave master's God, but from the lens of my struggle. And then I'm going to see how God speaks to me through the lens of oppression. Pharaoh and Israel didn't have the same gods. The master and the slave don't serve the same God. They can't see God the same way because one is free and the other is shackled. And the way I see God is not the same way that the average white person, particularly of good class, can see God, because they don't have my lens. Black theology gives me the freedom to interpret God through my lens, through the lens of my people. So that's how the invisible church was formed. It countered white plantation religion. Watch this. And it countered white oppression. It emphasized freedom and liberation, equality. Martin Luther King, right? Right? We are liberationists. Martin Luther King took the gospel and said, no, let's reinterpret this, because you can't ask us to praise God on Sunday and then whip us and segregate us and mistreat us on Monday. So the civil rights movement was birthed in the church from a black theological perspective. And that's the history of the church. Post-emancipation, black church became a major civic institution. Civic. Now I want you to watch this. Let's go further. Civic. Black church and civil rights from 1960s to the present. Who is the black church presently? Who are we? These boys being killed in the street? Right? 7 out of 10 black men will have some encounter with the penal system. I was just riding up here today on Cassidy Avenue. We used to be able to come up. I'm just going to keep it real. I didn't smoke a lot of reefer, but I smoked a little bit coming up in Shepherd. And you know, we would come up the hill on Cassidy. I had a whole lot of spots where I could buy me a little nickel bag. Because it was illegal. So we had to do this undercover, and some of the people that we probably copped a little bit from end up in prison. Now, why am I saying that? I just came down the same Cassidy Avenue, and the white man got a store where you can go and buy reefer. And they call it medical marijuana. That guy's going to get rich off the same drug that sent our parents and brothers to prison and wrecked their whole life. And now you can buy it, Mike. in the same neighborhood where it was once illegal. Why? Because the white man says, now we're going to sell it. So racism exists. The black church seems to be no longer concerned about its community. Pastors and preachers are disinterested in matters pertaining to social justice. And yet that is how the church was birthed. Next clause. Instead, we are more preoccupied, this is what I call individual pietism. I'll explain that, versus the community engagement. What do I mean by individual pietism? I'm going to get my breakthrough. I'm going to get my blessing. I'm going to get my praise on. Individual pietism rather than the whole of the community. And it's led to prosperity preaching. Come on, get your blessing. Forget about what happened to the boy in the street. Forget about the millions of black men that are now in prison. Forget about what's happening to our grandchildren. Just come on, get your blessing, get your breakthrough, and individual prosperity. That's not African thinking. African thinking is always village and community. Eurocentric thinking is individual capitalism. Right? It seems that the black church experience no longer finds its full identity with the community. Identity formation and religious practice happens primarily within congregation walls. It's coming from a book. I'll tell you about this book. Right? What's the key statement? The most problematic situation, because several persons in my generation of spiritual believers are unfamiliar with and not at all vested in or knowledgeable of the history of the black church, this could produce the end of the black church. This is different from the claim of a generation of hellions, right? There are black millennials who have not committed to the church, but many are clearly conscious of faith. When I speak of the demise of the black church, I'm not saying that there will be no black church, but I'm not placing an immediate expiration date, because this is from a millennial, that I do not believe that is realistic. I do, however, believe that there could be a day when the black church as a social justice institution does not even exist, and it becomes like a ice cream parlor. Just come on, get ever what you want, get a restaurant, let me have this multi sort of kind of thing, and it's no longer doing the work of ministry. Next slide. This leads to a divided mind. Who are we? Really? What are we doing? And how is what we are called to do, how's it impacting outside? Really? All this money, all these minds, how is it translating into the upward progress and development of a community and people? Or are you just coming to get your praise on and getting your blessing and then going on home? Who's speaking to Pharaoh? Pharaoh's downtown. Pharaoh is the power structure. Pharaoh is the government. Pharaoh is the oppressor. And he said, Moses, go to him. And now it might cost you something, but are you willing to go? Mike, we don't do it, Doc. We ain't got time too much for that. Watch this. Let's keep going. We'll go further. I'm going to pass some of this stuff here. Let's go back to the previous slide. Yeah, individual pietism, which I talked about, that's personal prosperity, right? Prosperity preaching, get rich, get your blessing, right? Really listen to what's being preached. Now, I'm going to name some names because they don't mind naming my name, so I'm going to name some names. Okay? But I'm coming at it from a purely academic point of view. Whenever preachers talk about living your best life and getting your blessing, that's individual pietism. In other words, make yourself great. Jesus didn't have nowhere to lay his head. And what does it profit a man if you gain the whole world? So, materialism. And I'm telling you, I'm a preacher. Most of the black clergy is uneducated. That is, they don't have at least an earned baccalaureate degree. Most. I'm not speaking of any, I'm just giving you the facts. Untrained and unlearned. But if you do this thing right, you can at least have a $100,000 salary. And you can get out the hood and get you a nice house and have black folk give their money, give you a good life, and you never give them anything in return. It just does exist. All you got to do is get up and say, God done called me. And you instantly enter into a profession that could give you a pretty decent pay. And all of a sudden, without any college or nothing, you might make 6 figures. And some of you right now working hard, trying to climb up a little bit. And you got trained and you got some college. You see what I'm saying? Who pimping who? Let's go further. Here we go. Let's stop right there. The black church was born fighting for freedom. Testimony of black slaves are, if you ever read some old books, you hear the testimony of black slaves. Jesus is not only concerned with salvation, but Jesus is also concerned with liberation. Can you bring up the Bible and still keep the power up? I mean, side by side, I can't do it now. Y'all open up your Bible then. Luke chapter 4. And I'm going to, may I use this Bible? Okay, wait, yeah, thank you. Thank you, sweetheart. Luke chapter 4. I used to be able to bend down and just grab stuff, man. I've just bent down just now and the pain said, bam! Welcome to the club, Doc. Yeah, I'm gonna read it to you. Luke chapter 4. I think it's what I want. Yeah. What version is this, Mike? NIV. Okay. Yeah, get your Bibles out, whether it's King James or watch the call of Jesus. I told you there are many different call stories. Here's another one from Luke. Read through this. Jesus was full of the Holy Spirit, verse 1. He returned from the Jordan, and he was pushed into the desert, right? Where for 40 days he was tempted by the devil. He ate nothing during those days, and at the end of them, he was hungry. The devil said unto him, we'll pass all that. Let's see. Curtis, where is that passage where Jesus says, the Spirit of the Lord is, here we go. I'm sorry, verse 14. Let's skip down. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm going to start at verse 14, and then we'll end at right there at 18. Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit. Write this, right? News about him spread through the whole countryside. He taught in their synagogues, and everyone praised him. He's talking to the Jews. Remember, the Jews were oppressed by the Romans, right? He went up to Nazareth. That's the ghetto. right? Luke says, can anything good come out of Nazareth, right? So that was the ghetto. That was the lowest socioeconomic class in all of Jerusalem. He went up to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and on the seventh day, he went into the synagogue, as was his custom, and he stood up to read the scroll of the prophet Isaiah. Look at this. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. There's a call, right? Because he has anointed me, there it is, to do what? To preach the gospel where? Wilderness. The poor. Let's look at more. The prisoner. The blind. The oppressed. The poor, the prisoner, the blind. If that ain't the hood, what is? And Jesus said, this is where I'm going. This is who I'm going to defend. This is who, he didn't say I'm going to defend the Romans. He said, the Spirit of the Lord done got on me, and I'm going to the community that needs me the most. And notice what he said, to the community. Never said, I'm going to go and get my blessing and get my breakthrough. No, I'm going to deliver the community that is oppressed. Do you know what that is, y'all? Social justice. Mike, I'm telling you, we don't even preach social justice. We preach personal prosperity. Get your blessing, get your healing, live your best life. And nobody's talking about the poor. I heard somebody say TD Jakes. Here we go. Let's go back to our slide, and I'll close with this slide. Prosperity preaching. Now, don't y'all get mad at me. If you do, I don't have to come no more. I got a church. Right? Let's go back. Keep going forward. We're going to go a few slides. Yeah, this is good. Let's stop right there. Moments of black church resistance. I want you to see the evolution, and then we're going to close with a few more slides, right? Liberationist faith, that's the slave church, right? Then organized liberationist church institution, that's when individual black churches begin to grow. My home church, Refuge, 1911, right? 1911, that was the Great Migration. Slaves had just been freed in the 60s, 1860. 50 years later, you now have organized churches, right? We got buildings, Corinthian and Refuge and Papa and Mother Dear, and they formed these big churches, Macedonia, right? Organized. There was a movement all over the nation as black folk came up out of the South, and they formed these institutions. That's where we get our Sunday school movement from. Right? Watch this. The next one. Church-led liberation movements. It led to the civil rights movement. We were very organized. The National Baptist Convention. That's a whole collection. I grew up in that. Where churches will come together all over the nation as one with one voice. And you were accountable. When I got ordained as a pastor 40 some odd years ago, I had other pastors ordain me. Now you can get it online. But I had older pastors sit me down and say, boy, you're going to get out there, but you're going to be accountable to us. And then the pastors were in one accord. If I got kicked out of one church, I couldn't run to the next church because they were connected. Right? And it led to the most powerful movement against racism that this country has ever known, the civil rights era. That was led by black church women. The men got the voice, but the women did the moving. Right? And then it led to the self-conscious liberation. And now we have black theology. And James Cone, who's the father of black theology and liberation theology, came from the civil rights era. And most black preachers, if you go to their commentaries, most of the authors on their book, Vanessa, they're Eurocentric or German theologians. Matthew Henry, James Cone, James, Cone, Cone. You got to read. He went to the seminary, to Harvard, got his degree, and then he started telling these white professors, I don't have the same God. I can't have the same God as my oppressor. How God works in me is not the same way he works in you, because we are two different classes. And I doubt if there's been 10 pastors in this whole city that's ever read one of James. Now, they got Matthew Henry's book and a bunch of German theologians in Western Europe somewhere, and they're interpreting God through their lens, but not one of them have black authors on their library. Number one, because we don't have enough preachers that go to school and get training so they can get into the educational system. So we don't have enough black authors. We don't have enough black writers that can put our theology out there. Why go to school when you can make 6 figures? If you can preach and sing and hoop a little bit. Why go there and be tested? You can even be a bishop today. Now, I'm just speaking for me. Y'all don't get mad at me. I don't even know what that is. Let me tell you, it's a cluster of various groups, right? So whoever has a cluster of churches, they get together and they create this formal kind of bishopric, right? And you can now become a bishop, and evidently it means something I still don't know, because the word uses bishop and pastor interchangeably, and overseer. They're all the same thing. It's hard enough being a pastor. But it's economic, because you create a mentality in people and say, this the bishop, it must be important. That ain't nothing but a pastor, y'all. And most are untrained. And many are millionaires. And you might have more education than them. You're a social worker, or you got a master's or a bachelor's. You are already have more college education than 70% of all the pastors in Columbus. Next slide. The gospel meaning and the black church's mission. Let's go further. We're going to go through just 2 more. I got to get to T.D. Jakes. Keep going. Y'all know this. We'll go keep pushing. Ooh-wee. Here I go. Get ready. Here we go. Right? Stop right there. Black theology is a theology of black liberation. It seeks to plumb the black condition in light of God's revelation of Jesus Christ, so that the black community can see the gospel and it being commensurate with the achievement of black humanity. I will never be satisfied until we all satisfied. I don't care what I drive, where I live. I'll never be satisfied until things get better for the community and for the people that put me in the car where I live. The message of liberation is a revelation of God as revealed through Jesus Christ, that freedom is important to the gospel. And if you don't think that God don't want things better for black folk, I want to know what God you serve. If you don't think he wants our sons out of prison, a better justice system, then I want to know, what Bible are you reading? Now, I know what Bible the rich reads, but which one you reading? And how is all this giving and all this churching translating into the betterment of your community? Jesus is a liberator. Moses was a liberator, and salvation also involves liberation. Next slide. We're almost done. I got to get to Jake's. Here we go. The call story of Jesus, Luke chapter 4, to set the captives free. We just went over that. To set the captives free. That's the purpose of the gospel. That's what Jesus preached. Social justice. That's what he preached. Next verse. Keep going. I've already discussed that. The gospel is about liberation. Black theologians' mission. Let's pass that. We're going somewhere. We're going to keep moving. Keep moving. Here's James Cone. All right. Stop right there. Write those scriptures down. Just read them. Every last one of those scriptures deal with liberation. For people to say, here you go talking all this black stuff. You know, it's gotten so bad in the black community that we don't even like to talk about blackness. He ain't talking about me. We don't even, like if I tell you Jesus was dark, some of y'all might get mad at me. Yeah, but Revelation says he had woolly hair and red eyes and his skin was like bronze. Well, that ain't Ronald Reagan. And we don't like ourselves so much that we don't even want Jesus to look like us. That ain't my Jesus. My Jesus looked like Charlton Heston or somebody, or John Wayne. Really, black people don't like black people. And that's the Willie Lynch syndrome. So I got a picture of Jesus in my church. He got an afro. And kinky hair and red eyes and big lips and bronze skin. He looked like me and you, Doc. Those scriptures all speak to liberation. Next slide. Oh, let me go back to it. Take your time. Yeah, take a picture or whatever. Take your time. Luke chapter 4. Then Matthew 25, verse 31 through 44. The first one, that's okay. Exodus chapter 3, verse 1. Then Exodus chapter 5, verse 1. And Exodus 19 and 4. But that third chapter in Exodus, just read that whole chapter. Y'all good now? Okay, next slide. Next slide. Black pastors on the mission of the black church, keep going. Okay, yeah, this is how they kicked Martin Luther King out. We'll go past that. You know, he was rejected by the black church. You do know that, right? Keep going. We're almost there. Stop right there. Here we go. Y'all know Raphael Warnock, right? The senator, right? Pastors Martin Luther King's church. He's a black theologian. He's also trained, has an earned doctorate. He wrote a book called The Divided Mind of the Church. Mike, you got to get that. By Raphael Warnock. Trapped by comfort by their own respective enclaves. In other words, every pastor gets a church, gets a group of people, 80% predominantly women, and they make a life for him. Unwilling to converse about the mission of the black church. They don't even know anything about black church history, Vanessa. They don't even know. Can't tell you nothing about slave revolts. Can't tell you nothing about the history of the black church. They're ill concerned with the real needs of the poor because they're trying to get rich. They're unfamiliar with the history of the black church. That means they are uneducated. Too many churches and pastors have distorted theology and turned it into personal prosperity. 151, here we go. Last few slides. The black preacher and prosperity preaching. Where did it all come from? It's pretty much a new, there used to be some pep like Reverend Ike and some of that stuff back in the day, but now it's everywhere, right? Here we go. Next click here. Paula McGee. Keep going there. I'm going to tell you about her. She wrote a book on T.D. Jakes. She was caught up in the movement, Woman, Thou Art Loosed. That one sermon made T.D. Jakes a millionaire. Now he's a multi-millionaire. I'm not talking about him. I'm just talking about the theology, right? Bishop Jakes and other pastors are now CEOs rather than pastors, and they offer theologies of promise. Be your best you, live your best life, right? And you very seldom see any of these mega pastors at the forefront of social justice. Even when these boys and girls get killed in Columbus, they might march for a little while, but for the most part, they do not confront the mayor or the police. Right? That's community. Next clause. How Jakes describes, and this is very important, churches ought to brand themselves. Branding. Guess who else does branding? McDonald's. Walmart. And so she wrote a book, Curtis, called The Walmartization of the Black Church. Everybody want to get a banner? Everybody want to get a marketing scheme? And now the church becomes big business. Right? Keep going. Bishop Jakes is the only black preacher who is compared to, on one hand, Billy Graham, and on the other hand, he's contrasted with Donald Trump and Michael Dell of Dell Industries. Billy Graham, he's a preacher, and Michael Dell and Steve Jobs by Fortune magazine. Watch this, next one. You ought to read the article in Forbes.com. I'll send this to your pastor. It's called Christian Capitalism, Mega Churches and Mega Business. Don't y'all remember there used to be community churches? Like if you lived up the hill, you had your churches up here, and then down the hill, you had your churches up there, and it ain't like that no more. Now you got one church with 10,000 or 5,000 people. Well, that's 400 member congregations. So the wealth is being concentrated into these big buildings. And it's killing our communities. Mike, when we came up, I would see y'all come from church, and y'all would see us come on Sunday. Everybody went to church with their parents, and then we didn't do nothing until Sunday afternoon. In your case, Saturday afternoon. It was all in the community. Well, we don't even have neighborhoods like that no more. We don't even have whole families anymore. Ain't no mama and daddy. Right. And daddy, and mommy, and homosexuality, and lesbianism, and all these things. Good book for all you professional women. I'm kind of diverting here. To professional women, it's entitled When Marriage. I'll think it through. By Richard Harris. I always recommend this. Deb, when marriage or something about, basically here's the gist of the book, that a reason why a lot of black women, this is deep, Mike, have opted away from the black man is because they can't find a black man that has credit, right? I'm just keeping it real, equal status, right? So, but they're still sexual, and a lot of black women are opting for white men or same-sex satisfaction because of the absence of the black man. He in jail, so she can't find any satisfaction, and unless she's in heaven, she still has needs. Just keeping it real. And it's leading to alternative expressions of sexual satisfaction. And it's sad because they took our black men. And even the ones that may remain are like zombies or like another child and uneducated. It's a design. Right? All right, so let's close here. The Potter's house. Here we go. For Jake's and the other new black churches, African American worship and its components, testimony, prayer, singing, sermons, are so critical to the religious identity of black churches, and their members are also now products to be packaged and marketed and sold. So we're selling our religious experience, and it's really going to get crazy with the internet. This is nothing to be sold or packaged as if it was McDonald's. Next clause. Unashamed of his success, Jakes proudly touts the trinkets of American financial success. He has a Bentley, private jet, expensive suits, and mansions. And the money did not come from heaven. Amen. It came from your offering. And I'm not saying don't take care of your pastor. But you ought to challenge him to care about social justice. The book is called Is Marriage for White People? Is Marriage for White People? How African American marriage is on the decline. And it's written by an African American sociologist. It's a funny title. In other words, he's saying only white successful people can enjoy marriage because a professional black female cannot find a suitable partner. Written by a black man. And I always encourage our business women, my wife and others, educated and got good jobs, got a degree, and you're blessed because most can't. Vanessa, they don't exist. And you get a woman out of college that got a degree and ready to build her life, she cannot find a suitable mate. And what happens, they get into those relationships, and the insecurity of the man turns on the women, and they kill her or beat her. And he talks about stories of women that were beat up and killed by their men, all because she had a degree and he was a garbage collector or whatever, and he couldn't come up. And the only way he could control his woman was with this. I can't do it with here. Ain't got no money. So I'm going to keep her in line. And they get in abusive relationships with ill-educated, uninformed men that aren't healthy, that are sick, that are not clean, that don't go to the doctor, that don't have insurance. I'll say it, no credit. And I'm not hard on the brothers. I'm just saying the system was designed to kill us. That's Willie Lynch, the Willie Lynch syndrome, right? Kill the male horse in front of the female horse, and you make the female and the children dysfunctional. So they took the male horse, You know, that's where lynching came from, right? They brought this guy in from Europe, said, how do you control the slave? Take the male horse, put ropes around his legs, the male, the stallion, right? Put it in front of the mare and their children, and then rip the male horse. And you traumatize the mare, the female, and she becomes overprotective of the children. That's what they do to us. And nobody talks about it. She compares ideological and marketing acumen. She compares what T.D. Jakes does with Sam Walton of Walmart with the same branding that characterizes today's popular, influential black churches. Jesus is a black man who, like Sam Walton, represents something that is very American. And we think success is money. And then we go and bury our children. My heart bleeds for our community. And I have a hard time getting pastors in Akron to march with me, and let's go down to the mayor's office and tell them exactly how we feel. I'm out there all the time. Next clause, we're done. A few more. The complexity of this Americanness, right? Material prosperity, that's Americanness, right? Combined with a black preacher and a black church aesthetic and identity is what makes a new black church. And that's where we are. And these guys are getting rich, and we're just now letting the women get in there. They still ain't there like us. It's still male dominated. In terms of leadership. And 80% of the money comes from women. I mean, I'm counting right here now. Y'all just raised an offering, right? 80% of that money is going to come from the female, but she ain't represented in leadership. Not here. I'm not, again, not alluding to you. Black church in general. Next verse. Next slide. Branding. Woman, thou art loosed. Remember that? That thing went powerful. That dude got rich off of that, y'all. He will tell you himself. Woman, thou, he branded that thing, had these mega conferences, and before you know it, multimillionaire, Doc, went flying. Yep, next one. Woman, thou art loose were conferences that led to mega conferences. Each one netted millions and millions of dollars. He built the church in Atlanta, the new church, and paid for it, y'all, cash. Next one. The phrase, woman, thou art loose, is adapted from Luke chapter 11. Y'all know the story. The brand began in 1992, and Jakes is still living off of that. He even came up with another one, men, thou art loose. And the man conference, the woman conference, and none of that has changed in your individual life. And get women, they go to these conferences, they pay all that money, and they feel good for a moment, but they still ain't got no man. Their children still in jail. And after they have the nice trip and the nice praise, because the neighborhood is not changed, they go right back to the same until the next conference. And then you go to the next conference. Right? Individual. Pietism. Let's go further. Okay, yeah. The brand expanded into a myriad of products, including nonfiction books, right? Sold millions of copies, annual conferences, record-breaking 83,500 women in attendance at the Georgia Dome, stage plays, movies, and 2004 motion picture that not only had box office success, but sold over 1 million DVDs. He was able to leverage movie success into 9 pictures and deals with Sony Pictures, and a lot of it dealing with the pain of women. Y'all's pain. And I still believe, and as much as I love my wife, and I love my wife, I still don't understand her. Here's the point. A woman knows what a woman feels. And I don't think you need a man to tell you. I don't even think he can. If he's a man. And I'll close here. One more slide. Keep going. Jake asserts that God can liberate women from their oppression. And God can liberate, woman, thou art loosed. And God can deliver you from personal traumas like domestic violence, like rape, which all apart underneath poverty and domestic violence is racism. Next one. Jakes takes a story of an unnamed woman with an 18-year-old infirmity. She gets healed by Jesus in the synagogue, and he teaches that story in the Bible and in Bible study. Woman, thou art loose. Next clause. He then preaches several sermons, starts local conferences, self-publishes a book, self-published, and they're all based on the same text. A few more. In so doing, watch this, and I'll close here. He not only successfully creates a brand, but he then gives a faith to the brand. W-T-A-L, woman, thou art loose. T.D. Jakes Ministry. Now you watch these new preachers, these young brothers coming up today, they all trying to find a group, and then they can get them a hall, create them a ministry, brand that thing on Facebook or billboards, and they create their hustle. That's all I got for you. I taught that to a bunch of eager students. Now, on the original slide, it went on for 15 weeks, and we would spend much more time with that. I'm telling you, we got some work to do. And it starts with those who got the voice and the power in the church. It starts with the pastors. And I ask myself, do we really care? And what are we doing to those outside the door? That's all I got for you. Thank you.
Come on, let's give him some love. I pray that you have been helped today by what's been said. One of the things, Doc, that I have said to our church, thanks, bro, as we make this paradigm shift, I want our church to be transformational. And I've got little stingers. You know, why? And because I think that the black church has to do more than just come in here and shout, pray. We had a daycare center before. And so right now I'm working on one of our members who has a lawn service. How can I help that person get to where he needs to be so he can hire some folk. And I think that everything that you said in the class is liberation, man. And unfortunately, we don't understand liberation, and because we don't understand it, don't want to be liberated.
That's right.
Ari Vernon said something that makes a lot of sense. He says, get your money right. And that's what we have to do, is to get our money right. In the black community, a dollar circulates one time. In the Jewish community, it's 14 times. And so for me, as we come to black history, it's great that we're celebrating, but we done celebrated black history for several years now. And how many black businesses are there? You know, in Columbus, there are less black businesses now than it was when you and I were growing up in the late 60s and 70s. I looked forward to going on Mount Vernon Avenue. I'd be on Mount Vernon, getting my shoes shined. My doctors were there. The barbershops, Freeman Brothers Shoes, the cleaners. I mean, there was something to do for black folk. But under the notion of advancement, it took us back. And what nobody talks about now is the fact that I-670 divided the black community. And it was no accident. It was no accident. I remember when they wanted to build a wall back here, and I went to the meeting, and I said to them, we don't need no wall. We already divided. You know, and so I want those of you who are members of our church, you're going to hear that word transformation a lot. A lot. If you're starting a business, I want to know about it. We got to change and get our money right. We got to teach our kids how to open up bank accounts, how to do stocks and bonds, how to write a check. It's stupid now. Watch this, Doc. With all the churches that we have, black churches we have in Columbus, from Monday to Friday, our buildings sit empty. And we arguing about what school our children are going to. Well, you know, I don't know who would want to do it, who want to teach, I don't know. But it makes no sense that we send our children to white folks to train them. And don't beat me up, but this is a fact. What I've learned is, from me being in school, you were never taught, you were brainwashed. We were brainwashed. I didn't hear about Black Wall Street until 10 years ago. I was taught Eli Whitney discovered the cotton gin. It was a black man that Eli Whitney took his patent, stole his patent.
Now they're trying to make it a law. You know that CRT stuff?
In Florida, they're trying to wipe it out.
No teaching of black.
Okay.
Like it doesn't exist.
And that concerns me. And that's why the time that I have with my grandchildren, my grandson, I'm always trying to say, hey, you know, you need to know this. And that's what we used to do. Even on Sunday, after church, go home, we all ate together. It was family time. Listen, you can still do that on Saturday. Have your dinner on Saturday and have your grandkids and your kids around the table. Make it your favorite day. and start throwing wisdom to our kids. That's where we got to go. Okay, I told y'all we get out at 1 o'clock in CBI, and I'm going to try to be obedient. But, I look, don't beat me up, and I ain't beating my folk up that left, but that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem, is that my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. Watch this. The B part that we forget is because they reject the knowledge. And he says, because you reject the knowledge, I'm going to reject you. And so we wonder why black folks is catching hell. Is because, as you said, 3 generations removed, we have gotten as far away from God as we can get. And every generation it's going to, unless something happens, it's going to get further and further and further away. When we start the Sabbath on Friday evening, it's exciting for me because my grandchildren will say, Grandpa, it's time to start the Sabbath. We got to teach our kids. We got to reach back. We've been here since 1969, this church has been here. 60. Yeah. And we built this in 99. But I don't want my legacy to be, Pastor, y'all, we built a great church, built a nice church. What transformation have we made? How many businesses did we help get started? How many kids did we send to college? The pastor can have the vision, but y'all got to catch it. Y'all got to catch it, because there's no way that I can do it by myself. It's like I was saying the other day. Somebody says, Pastor, we getting ready to start a business. We need $5,000. Okay, I ain't got it. But let's go to the church and let's see if we can do it. And she says, I got 500. And she says, I got 1,000. Okay, I got 1,000. Before you know it, we got the money to start the business. But watch this. The business gets better and better. And so now they start tithing back. Okay. Woo. That's my passion. And unfortunately, everybody don't get it. Everybody don't get it. I would love to be able to say, saints, we got a single mother, 3 kids. They need a house. Okay. How do we do it? Well, this is what I think. Can't buy the house, but we can give her the down payment. That's transformational stuff, man. Every ministry ought to start out of a need. I have a friend who pastors a church. This is my last story. He pastors a church and had a lot of ladies, single women, and they needed cars fixed, and had a couple mechanics in the church. And he asked them, he said, hey, we got a lot of ladies, man. They don't know how to change the oil. They don't have a man in their life. What do you think? A ministry started. And so now, when they need their oil changed or some repair on their car, without any strings, I said that nicely, right? without any strings, they've started an automobile ministry, auto repair ministry in their church. That's reformation. So I ask you to pray about it. Do we want to just be a church that gathers on Saturday? Or do we want to be transformational? Doc, I thank you, man. These are the kind of people that I love bringing to our church. And there need to be more sessions where we can just talk and ask questions. That's where I love to preach. I love to preach. I love praising. I was so happy this morning, I'm telling you, I'm still bubbling on the inside. From the word, from the music, the baptism, but I also know that there comes a place where I got to study. I got to study. Because if I don't study, I can't be fresh for you. You know what I'm saying? So, anyway, love you guys to life. Any questions? Any questions? Comments? Deacon McKenzie. Real loud, because I think we're still streaming. No, we're streaming.
I listened to you, because we went back, you know, when you was a little fellow there. But I've been here since 65, off and on. Been at Corinthians since 1966. Part of that time, I had one in and one out. But I got him in here. But when I first got here, and a lot of the pastors, the older pastors and stuff, they would be down City Hall on Monday. We don't get that now. Mondays was the pastor's days off and the barber days off. But those old pastors, they worked together with what they had. It wasn't that I had my little hill over here and your little hill on it. We got a lot of that now. And the businesses in the neighborhood, some things. That's 670 coming in. I showed my wife what was going to happen. From Martin Luther King, looking out that building downtown, what was going to happen to us. We were shouting, eyes closed. The businesses, we ran them out. We moved to the suburbs. We allowed in and everything to come in to our communities. We tore up our communities. Yeah, the city divided us. They knew what they were doing. But we were shouting the thrill instead of looking. We don't get involved in social justice. We don't. We don't. When the police shoots one of our kids and stuff, everybody got a camera. Everybody in the neighborhood got a phone. But when one of my kids shoots your kids, who has a phone? That's right. That's right. Who has a phone? Nobody. Didn't see it. But we got to get it together. We can't look for the pastor, the church to do it all. We can't look for the schools to do it all. I talked to a medic, a white brother, Friday, and we were talking about family and what was lost. We were sleeping when they took prayer out of the school. And he was younger than me, but we were talking just about some of the things that kept him in line. He was younger than me. The paddlings kept me in line. But like I said, until we get that pride back in us and do something about it, because we can't make it in our own neighborhood, but everybody else comes in. Pool that stuff together. And like you said, sell us the drugs, these smokestacks they're blowing and stuff. We buy into that. I had one tell me, and I'm going to shut up, one Jordanian tell me, not beating nobody up. I said, hey, because he had on his little stuff. That was before everybody could do that, but I had mine in there. You know, he didn't see mine, I saw his. But I said, hey, you come in the neighborhood, you sell this and that. I said, why do you do that? You living out here, over there. He said, we can sell anything in your neighborhood.
And that's a problem. We're going to do it again. And again, I want to thank you, bro. I want you to have the final remarks, the benediction. Our worship leader, Elder Reeves, thank you so very, very much. Fantastic job. Look at all beautiful and everything. Glad that you all are here. Thank you for staying. And I wish you a blessed weekend. And Pastor, if you'll come, give the final remarks and the benediction. And after the benediction, you'll be dismissed.
All right, thank you very much. Give yourselves a good hand. Thanks for sticking around, too. Yeah. Now, I'm going to do this, and I don't know whatever you're going to, and Mike, I really mean this because this church means a lot to me, and you know what you mean. I don't know what you may plan to gift us with. We good. Whatever you're going to do, I'm going to ask you to do this, Mike. What's y'all's name? Y'all right there. Yeah, that good couple. She's like, who, me? Whatever they going to give me, I want them to give it to you. And then I want you to find somebody that might need some help. Will you do that? Okay, so whoever it might be, y'all might got some, you know they need some help with their utilities, so what you're going to give me, I'm asking you to give it to them. I don't even know who you are, but then y'all be a blessing to somebody. Maybe in your family or whatever, okay? All right, that's all I'm asking. I can do whatever I want to do with my stuff, right? Boom.
You the man.
I'm the man. And then y'all bless somebody. Now, don't y'all use it, because y'all got something. But bless somebody. And I know y'all know somebody. All right? Let's close with prayer. I thank you for this church. I thank you for this pastor. I thank you for the support. Thank you for his vision, transformation. And may you set him again, renewed a fire for the least of them, according to Matthew 25. I pray, God, that you would bless this church in a mighty way, and that we have a greater consciousness of social justice and the meaning of the gospel. Bless everyone under the sound of my voice and our families and all the dysfunctions that goes on in our own house. Help us provide leadership and peace. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Amen.